Hello there, Steve here in Sydney. I'm going to talk about pseudo-skepticism, which is widespread on the internet. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, some possible solutions. And first of all, I'll begin by introducing a Russian political term. 1917, there was a Bolshevik revolution where the medieval economic system of the Soviet Union, administered by the Tsars, was overthrown. The royal family were killed, 1917, and a whole new economic system was put into place there in the Soviet Union. And what happened was, very quickly, it was noticed that a lot of terrible things happened. According to Gulag Archipelago writer Alexander Solzhenitsyn, 2/3 of the Russian population ended up either dead or jailed. Exiled to Siberia for 10 years merely for thought crimes, being heard to say something. Right? That was very common in the Soviet Union. And 2/3 of the Russian population is a lot of people. It's a tragedy without parallel in history. It's helped to make the 20th century one of the worst centuries throughout history. One of the more horrific things that was done was the centralization of power and land ownership. A population of people called Kulaks, which is simply Russian for independent farmer, refused to give their independently owned land back to the centralized government, and 6 million of these Kulaks, Russian farmers, were literally starved to death. Their food was taken from their farms, all their tools and equipment for growing food, making food, was simply confiscated by the Russian police, and 6 million people were allowed to die. And their crime was that they opposed the political program of the centralized communist Russian government. Now you can look this up. It's called the Holodomor. I'm not sure how to pronounce it because it's a Russian word, but it happened in 1932. You can look it up, and it's a tragedy of unparalleled proportions. People have been starved to death in such giant numbers, except of course communist China, where Mao Zedong starved, I believe, 70 million people to death to sell their food to buy nuclear weapons in the 1950s. That's a lot worse, I suppose. That's communism again, associated with militant government atheism. Now, while all these things were happening since 1917, throughout the Western world, there's always been youthful, naive students in their teenage years and early 20s who had a leftward leaning and thought that they would become apologists for these bestial regimes that imprisoned 2/3 of their own population and or killed them, according to Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Gulag Archipelago. The apologists sprang up because they were basically naive and didn't know the whole story, because the Russian system publicised themselves with carefully contrived newsreels, you see, showing great canals being built, dams and industry moving forward, and millions of tractors being made, that sort of thing. And some of the bad news that came out was simply swept under the carpet, and intellectuals all over the place, these apologists for communism, for socialism, a new social order, these apologists, these young people, left-leaning liberals, simply went on and on and on, working for free, basically, apologising for communism, saying it's nowhere near as bad as you think, you don't understand, and when they take over, things will be a whole lot better. And they often said, well, we could learn a lot from communism, because look at the wonderful tractors it makes and things like that, and the canals and that sort of stuff. So now, the Russian Communist Party used to laugh at them, absolutely laugh at these apologists for socialism. I'll give you this is the Russian political term I've been bringing to you. It's called useful idiots. The left-wing supporters of the communist empire in Western countries were referred to as useful idiots. They're people working without pay, working for the Communist Party in Moscow. Now, the moral of the story is that it's possible to find useful idiots, these people who will work unpaid for a distant utopian cause that doesn't really work. You only see the shiny bits. It's possible to find these useful idiots on many issues and in most countries. And here's where I'm alluding to, I'm going to connect it directly to pseudo-skepticism on the internet today. They are essentially, I will explain, they are useful idiots working for Big Pharma. That's massive drug companies. I'm going to explain it to you now. Pseudo-skeptics, in case you don't know, are a bunch of individuals which are so big, they're worldwide, and they're essentially a very disaffected, very unhappy group of individuals who basically self-medicate. They want to overcome their own personal grief and disquiet, which is probably justified. They want to overcome it by hurling abuse at other people all over the internet, in particular those associated with psychic phenomena, afterlife, and religions. What happens is there's a lot of people in society grow up with axes to grind, internal unhappiness which they tend to externalise, blame on other people, and maybe society at large is to blame for some individuals' personal disquiet and disharmony internally. Probably is. It's hard to live in a big beehive society, isn't it? I understand that. But may I ask you, did you ever think you should self-medicate using an alternative medicine scheme, which is basically your own ideas about what you think is right? When Penn and Teller and James Randi tell you in all of their videos and literature that you should go and see a health professional wearing a white coat with a scientific clipboard, namely a drug company, can I say to you that you might care to try if you're very angry, anxious, you suffer fear of oppression, that there's likely a drug like Paxil available, P-A-X-I-L, and it does help to diminish shyness and anxiety and fear. This is worth following up because James Randi himself in his outing statement talks about fear of the oppressive society which caused his personal life to be quite a misery. The actual words are, I think I've got them here, the actual words he used were, there's not much gay about being homosexual in his outing statement. There's not much gay about being homosexual. And he spent 70, 80 years living in a state of mind of not being happy at all. And he says here, living in the shadows in a culture that was totally hostile to any variations. So he felt surrounded by total hostility. Now, I can empathise with that. I understand hostility. I can see that. But why didn't he try a medication from Big Pharma like Paxil, P-A-X-I-L? It eases your nerves. There's hundreds of medications provided by Big Pharma. There's medications for obsessive compulsive disorder, and big companies will provide them for you, but you have to go and get a prescription and see a white-coated professional with a clipboard first. You cannot self-medicate by just subscribing to James Randi, which is what a lot of you seem to be doing. Now, CSICOP is the peak organisation for skeptics, or should I say pseudo-skeptics. They're frequently terribly dishonest, and they're actually there to make war on alternative medicine, which has never killed anybody. Alternative medicine has never killed anybody, but scientific medicine has killed more people than all the car accidents in history. So why don't you go and try something like Paxil, recommended by Big Pharma, the men in the white coats, and it calms anxiety. It's very good for that. If you have to make a speech, go to a job interview, it'll get you through the day, right? It'll get you there. It solves your problem. There's a small disadvantage to this scientific medicine though. You take it for a few weeks and then you forget to buy it, you can't pick it up, you can't afford it. It's like a lottery. Some of you may commit suicide. But that's scientific medicine, so it's okay, right? Alternative medicine never hurt anybody. Big Pharma through James Randi makes war on alternative medicine, which never hurt anybody. Scientific medicine kills thousands of people a year. But you wish to subscribe to this balmy army that you've joined because you're self-medicating by subscribing, aren't you? You didn't think about seeing a white-coated professional first, did you? A noteworthy property that observers note about pseudo-skeptics is their dishonesty, which is toward other people and, more tragically, to themselves. For example, they use misleading titles on their YouTube accounts. They call themselves rational atheists and rational response and that sort of stuff, when they're anything but rational. It would be far more honest to call yourself angry atheist, or vexatious atheist, or rancorous atheist, or quarrelsome atheist, or I want to fight atheist. That would be far better. And to that end, I think to help you with your dishonesty, which is your own undoing, it gets you nowhere in online encounters with average people. It gets you nowhere being dishonest, because you always get found out when you start jousting with average people. You always get found out. The trick would be to go to Big Pharma and get an honesty pill. There must be a medication for personal dishonesty. I don't know the name of it, but I'm sure the local health professional with a white coat and a clipboard will have a dishonesty pill for you. Unless, of course, you think dishonesty is fine and it's great and lying to yourself is a good idea. I personally don't think it is. But why don't you go and visit your local doctor and get a dishonesty medication? Being able to live with one's internal lies, or maybe stop lying altogether. Just try and spend a whole day without telling fibs, using false names, misleading titling, and telling lies to people online. Or you could start off with some medication, but make sure it doesn't cause suicide when you cease taking it. Do be careful about that.